Okay, let's look at document D now of the Jamestown Mini Q. Document D is a reading from the book called The Virginia Adventure, published in 1994. Author is Ivor Noel Hume. And the reading goes as follows. In 1609, Francis West and 36 men sailed up the Chesapeake Bay to try to trade for corn with the Potawatomi Indians. Although still part of the Powhatan Confederacy, the tribe had seen less of the English than had those closer at hand, and with luck might be more friendly. And so it proved. Though West was able to load his small ship with grain, the success involved some harsh and cruel dealing by cutting of 2 of the salvage's heads and other extremities. The ship and her life-saving cargo returned to Jamestown. No one doubted that this new supply of grain would help, but it would not be enough to last the winter. On the other hand, decided the ship's crew, it was plenty to get them fatly home to England. So it was that Francis West, by the persuasion, or rather by the enforcement of his company, hoisted up sails and headed out into the Atlantic, leaving the colonists to the Indians and to God. Now, this document, the one we just read, is basically one that discusses the grain trade with the Powhatan Indians. And some content notes before we continue. The term Powhatan can cause confusion. It is sometimes used to identify the parent tribe in the area of Jamestown. At other times, it is used to refer to the parent group plus satellite tribes like the Potawatomi, which we just read about. In this document, Ivor Hume refers to the larger configuration as the Powhatan Confederacy. The satellite tribes lived in the area and were to some degree under the sway of the parent Powhatan tribe. To further confuse matters, the Powhatan chief was himself sometimes called Powhatan. More correctly, though, the presiding chief in these early years was named Wahunsinakak. It's also incidents like this, trade conducted by desperate settlers backed by the threat of force, that undoubtedly contributed to Indian reprisals or acts of revenge. Document E, which we'll get to in a moment, reveals a sharp increase in killings by Indians beginning in 1609. And in fairness to both sides, there were numerous instances of trade conducted on friendly terms, though, without violence. And the matter of disagreements within the Jamestown leadership and among the colonists is barely mentioned in this mini-Q, but it was a problem and no doubt affected morale and conditions. For example, at about the same time as this grain incident, John Smith was on his way back to England, and by some accounts, against his will and in irons. He was not much liked by other contenders for authority in Jamestown, and a lot of that has to do with what we've learned about John Smith and his management style, and the fact that he forced the gentlemen, the wealthy men who came on the first two ships to Jamestown, he caused and forced them to do work just like the rest of the common folk, and he made a lot of enemies in the process. All right, so now let's look at our document analysis questions. Remember, the first place to look when answering questions following the document is in the document. First question, though, for document D on the grain trade. First question is a tough one in that it's asking you, is this reading that we just read together, is this a primary source or a secondary source? Now, it doesn't jump out at you here in the reading saying, I am a primary source or I am a secondary source, but if you remember something that we learned earlier in the year, primary source document is one that would have been written or documented by somebody who witnessed the event. And a secondary source document is one that was written, an account that was written by someone who did not witness the event. And if you look closely under the source information, there's a good hint there that will help you answer this question. Second question asks, why did Francis West sail up the Chesapeake? Again, you're going to refer directly to the document for help in answering question 2. Question 3 asks, is there any evidence that the English forced the Indians to trade their grain? There is clearly evidence in the document, so refer to the document for help in answering question 3. Question 4, what eventually happened to the shipload of grain? Again, refer to the document. And question 5, how might the events described here relate to your findings in document B? And you might recall from document B, it showed Jamestown suffered from drought, and drought could mean less corn was grown, which caused conflict. So answer question 5 using your findings in document B. And finally, question 6 for this document asks, in what ways can you use this document to help answer the question, early Jamestown? Why did so many settlers die? It's not a coincidence here, ladies and gentlemen, that this question asks you to refer back to the very title of our mini Q, early Jamestown, why did so many settlers die? I'd like you to use document D to help answer this question, why did so many settlers die?